The wedding invitation felt like paper in my hands, but it burned like fire in my chest. My mother's voice echoed through the phone, casual and dismissive as always. Lily, we won't be able to make it to your wedding. Ashley's graduate school ceremony is the same weekend, and you know how important this is for her future. I stood in the bridal boutique, surrounded by white tulle and champagne-colored silk, and felt the world tilt. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Mom, I sent the save the dates 8 months ago. Ashley just got her ceremony date last week. Well, we can't ask her to miss her own graduation, can we? Be reasonable, Lily. You're getting married to some small-town accountant. Ashley is getting her master's degree from Princeton. This is a once-in-a-lifetime achievement. The boutique owner pretended not to hear, busying herself with a rack of veils. I caught my reflection in the three-way mirror, a bride-to-be in a simple but elegant gown, eyes red-rimmed, hand trembling as it clutched the phone. What about Dad? I asked, hating the pleading tone in my voice. Your father and I are a unit, Lily. Where I go, he goes. Besides, someone needs to take photos of Ashley receiving her diploma, you understand. I understood perfectly. I'd understood for 26 years. But what my mother didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd lived through this moment before. I'd lived through the wedding day where I stood at the altar alone, where my groom's face had been carefully neutral as he'd explained to his family that my parents had a prior commitment. I'd lived through the years that followed where every holiday, every birthday, every milestone had been overshadowed by whatever Ashley was doing. I'd lived through it all, right up until the car accident on a rainy Tuesday evening. 3 years into a marriage that had slowly crumbled under the weight of my family's rejection and my husband's growing resentment. I'd died at 29, alone in a hospital bed with divorce papers in my purse and no one to call. And then I'd woken up on my 23rd birthday, gasping and crying with 4 years of future knowledge burning in my brain. You know what, Mom? I said, my voice suddenly steady. You're right. Don't come to the wedding. There was a pause. She'd expected me to cry, to beg, to make it easy for her to feel like the reasonable one. Well, she said, recovering, I'm glad you're being mature about this. I'm being very mature, I agreed. In fact, I'm being so mature that I'm calling off the wedding entirely. What? Tell Ashley congratulations from me, I said, and hung up. The boutique owner looked at me with sympathy. Honey, are you okay? I smiled, and it felt like the first real smile I'd managed in 2 lifetimes. I'm perfect. Actually, I need to return this dress. The history of my family's abuse was long and intricate, woven through every year of my existence like a poisoned thread. Ashley was born when I was 3 years old, and from that moment forward, I became invisible. My mother, Miranda Chen, had always been ambitious, the kind of woman who saw her children as projects, as extensions of her own legacy. When Ashley came along, small and perfect, with my mother's dark eyes and my father's mathematical mind, I became the rough draft, the practice child, the one who didn't quite meet expectations. My father, Robert Chen, was a successful investment banker who measured everything in returns. He looked at Ashley and saw potential, a child who was reading at 3, doing multiplication at 5, playing Chopin at 7. He looked at me and saw adequacy. I was smart enough, pretty enough, talented enough, but in a family that valued excellence, enough was the same as failure. The favoritism started small. Ashley got the new backpack, I got her hand-me-down. Ashley got piano lessons with the best teacher in the city, I got group classes at the community center. Ashley's artwork went on the fridge, mine went in the recycling bin. By the time I was 10 and she was 7, the pattern was set in stone. In my first life, I'd accepted it. I'd internalized the message that I was less than, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention came my way. I had worked myself to exhaustion trying to earn my parents' love, never understanding that they'd already decided I wasn't worth the investment. I'd gone to a state school instead of an Ivy League because that's what my college fund could afford after my parents borrowed from it to send Ashley to a prestigious private middle school. I'd dated Tom, a kind but unremarkable accountant, because I didn't believe I deserved anyone better. I'd planned a modest wedding and apologized when my parents said they couldn't afford to contribute because they were saving for Ashley's graduate school. And when they'd chosen her graduation over my wedding, I'd swallowed the hurt and married Tom anyway, with his family watching and mine absent. The marriage had lasted 3 miserable years before Tom admitted he couldn't respect a woman who let her family treat her like garbage. The divorce papers had been served on a Tuesday. I'd died in a car crash that Friday, driving home from a bar where I'd drunk too much wine and cried into my phone while Ashley's voicemail played on repeat. But the universe, or fate, or whatever cosmic force governed such things, had given me a gift. I'd woken up on my 23rd birthday with 4 years of memories that hadn't happened yet, 4 years of knowledge about every choice and consequence. I knew that Tom was a dead end. He was a good man, but he'd never truly loved me. He'd loved the idea of a grateful, devoted wife who'd worship him for choosing her. When that wife turned out to be a broken woman with a toxic family, his interest had evaporated. I knew that my parents would never change, that Ashley would continue to be the golden child, that nothing I did would ever be good enough. And most importantly, I knew something that no one else in my family knew. I had a grandmother. My father's mother, Helen Chen, was a woman I'd met exactly 3 times in my first life. The last time had been at my funeral, where she'd arrived in a black Rolls Royce and stood apart from the sparse crowd, her face expressionless behind dark sunglasses. I'd learned later, through gossip that reached even the afterlife, that she'd tried to reconcile with my father for years, that he'd rejected her out of pride and old grudges. I also learned that she was worth approximately $400 million. Helen Chen had built a luxury hotel empire from scratch after divorcing my grandfather, a man who'd tried to keep her barefoot and pregnant in the 1960s. She'd fought him in court, won custody of my father, and then proceeded to become one of the most successful businesswomen in Asia. My father resented her for being stronger than his father, for refusing to be a traditional woman, for embarrassing the family name with her ambition. He'd cut her off when he was 30, refused to let her see her grandchildren, and told everyone she was dead. I'd believed him until I was 25 and accidentally found her Christmas cards in the attic, dozens of them, all returned unopened. In my first life, I'd never reached out to her. I'd been too beaten down, too convinced of my own worthlessness. But now, with foreknowledge and nothing left to lose, I had a plan. I was going to find my grandmother, build a relationship with her, and use the resources she offered to completely restructure my life. And when I was done, my parents would see my success plastered across every magazine and newspaper in the country, and they would know exactly what they'd thrown away. The turning point came on a Saturday morning, 2 weeks after I'd called off the wedding. Tom had been shocked, then angry, then relieved. "I don't understand," he'd said over coffee at our favorite diner. "What changed?" "I realized I was marrying you for the wrong reasons," I'd told him honestly. "You're a good person, Tom. You deserve someone who loves you completely. I'm not that person." He'd accepted it with surprising grace, and I suspected he felt the same relief I did. We'd been comfortable together, but never passionate, never real. Calling off the wedding had another benefit. It freed up my calendar. And on that particular Saturday morning, I used my freedom to drive 3 hours to the coast, where my grandmother lived in a sprawling oceanfront estate. I sat in my old Honda Civic in the circular driveway, staring up at the mansion and gathering my courage. In my memories of the funeral, Helen Chen had been elegant and remote, a figure carved from ice. What if she rejected me the way my father had rejected her, but I hadn't survived death and rebirth to be a coward? I rang the doorbell. A housekeeper answered, a middle-aged Filipino woman with kind eyes. "I'm here to see Helen Chen," I said. I'm her granddaughter, Lily." The woman's eyes widened. "Please, wait here." She disappeared into the house, leaving me standing in a foyer that probably cost more than my parents' house. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I was starting to think this had been a terrible idea when I heard the click of heels on marble. Helen Chen appeared at the top of the grand staircase. She was 73 years old and looked 60, perfectly dressed in ivory slacks and a silk blouse, her silver hair cut in a sharp bob. But it was her eyes that caught me. They were exactly like my father's eyes, like my own eyes, dark and intelligent and guarded. She descended the stairs slowly, studying me with each step. "Lily," she said when she reached the bottom. Her voice was accented, elegant. You look just like your mother. I'm sorry, I blurted out. I know this is strange. I know Dad told you not to contact us. But I found your Christmas cards and I wanted to meet you. Something flickered in her expression. Your father told you not to come here. My father doesn't control me anymore. She smiled then, small and sharp. No, I can see that he doesn't. Come, let's have tea. We sat in a sunroom overlooking the Pacific, drinking jasmine tea from porcelain cups that probably cost more than my monthly rent. For the first hour, we danced around the real conversation. She asked about my job, marketing coordinator at a tech startup, my hobbies, photography, reading, my education, state school, business degree. Then she said, "Why are you really here, Lily?" I set down my teacup. Because I want to know why my father cut you out of his life. Because I want to understand where I come from. And because I paused, choosing my words carefully. Because I think you and I might have more in common than I have with anyone else in my family. Your father thinks I'm a disgrace, Helen said bluntly. A woman who abandoned traditional values to chase money and power. He wanted a mother who would stay home and bake cookies, not a mother who built an empire. He wanted you to be small, I said. Yes, just like he wants me to be small. Her gaze sharpened. Tell me. So I did. I told her about Ashley, about the favoritism, about the money borrowed from my college fund. I told her about the wedding invitation and my mother's casual dismissal. I didn't tell her about the rebirth. That was too strange, too unbelievable, but I told her enough. When I finished, Helen was quiet for a long moment. I sent money every year, she finally said, for birthdays, holidays, graduation. Your father sent it all back. I hired investigators to take pictures of you and your sister just so I could see you grow up. I bought every local newspaper that mentioned your name in school honor rolls. I have a scrapbook with everything I could find. My throat tightened. You do? You are my granddaughter. I have 2 grandchildren, and I know nothing about either of you except what I can spy from a distance. Do you know how that feels? Yes, I whispered. I do. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was strong, her skin soft. I am 73 years old. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and no one to leave it to. Your father won't speak to me. I assume Ashley doesn't even know I exist. She doesn't. Then let me be honest with you, Lily. If you're here because you want a relationship with me, because you want to know your grandmother, I would like nothing more. But if you're here because you want my money, tell me now. I won't judge you for it. I just need to know. I looked into her eyes and saw the same loneliness I felt every day. I want both, I admitted. I want to know you. I want to have family who actually cares about me. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't also want the resources to build a life that doesn't depend on people who think I'm worthless. Is that terrible? She laughed, bright and genuine. That's honest. I can work with honest. She squeezed my hand. Here's what I propose. You come see me every week. We get to know each other, and we see where things go from there. I won't throw money at you like you're a charity case, but I will help you in any way I can. Deal? Deal, I said, and felt the first piece of my revenge plan click into place. The next 6 months were a blur of transformation. I visited Helen every Sunday without fail. We had brunch on her terrace, walked on the beach, talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told me stories about building her hotel empire from scratch, about the men who'd tried to destroy her and the women who'd helped her survive. I told her about my dreams of starting my own business, about the photography portfolio I'd been building in secret, about the life I wanted that had nothing to do with meeting my parents' impossible standards. She critiqued my work with brutal honesty. This photo is technically competent but emotionally empty, and pushed me to be better. She introduced me to her contacts in the luxury hospitality industry, people who could teach me about branding and marketing and the art of creating desire. And slowly, carefully, she started funding my dreams. It began with small things: a professional camera to replace my aging DSLR, introductions to gallery owners who could showcase my photography, a wardrobe upgrade that helped me look the part when I networked at industry events. Then came the bigger investments. Helen wanted to expand her hotel empire into boutique properties, intimate luxury experiences for the ultra-wealthy. She offered me a job as creative director for the new division, a position that came with a six-figure salary, equity in the company, and the freedom to shape the brand from scratch. I quit my tech startup job and threw myself into the work. I was good at it, better than good. I had an eye for aesthetics and an understanding of what made spaces feel special. Helen's hotels became known for their Instagram-worthy interiors, their perfect blend of luxury and intimacy. Travel magazines started featuring us. Influencers competed for invitations to our launches. My life transformed in ways I'd never imagined. I moved into a penthouse apartment overlooking the city. I wore designer clothes and attended exclusive events. I dated casually, but never seriously, focusing instead on building something that was entirely mine. And through it all, I didn't contact my parents. Not once. I knew from experience that they tracked me on social media. In my first life, my mother had occasionally left passive-aggressive comments on my posts, so I made sure my Instagram was a carefully curated highlight reel of my new life. Photos from Paris Fashion Week, candid shots with celebrity guests at our hotel openings, me shaking hands with Forbes reporters. I never mentioned my family, never explained where my success had come from. I just let the evidence speak for itself. 6 months after I first knocked on Helen's door, my grandmother made me an equal partner in her company. We stood in her lawyer's office while the papers were signed, and she smiled at me with fierce pride. "You've earned this," she said. "Not because you're my granddaughter, but because you're brilliant at what you do." I hugged her, this woman who'd become more of a mother to me in 6 months than Miranda had been in 26 years. "Thank you for giving me a chance." "Thank you for taking it," she replied. That night, Forbes published an article titled "The Chen Dynasty: How Grandmother and Granddaughter Are Revolutionizing Luxury Hospitality." The photo showed Helen and me standing in front of our newest hotel, both of us dressed in power suits, both of us smiling like we owned the world. Because we did. I knew my mother would see the article. I knew the exact moment she'd realize what had happened because my phone rang at 7 a.m. the next morning. I was in bed with a man whose name I couldn't quite remember, someone I'd met at a gallery opening and brought home out of boredom more than desire. I sent him away with a kiss and a coffee and answered my mother's call. "Lily, we need to talk." "Hello, Mother. How are you?" "Don't play games. I saw the Forbes article. What the hell is going on?" I poured myself a cup of coffee and settled onto my balcony, watching the sunrise over the city. "I'm not sure what you mean. I have a career. Is that surprising?" "You're working with Robert's mother? The woman he specifically told you to avoid?" "Dad never told me anything about grandmother. In fact, he told me she was dead." Imagine my surprise when I discovered she was very much alive and interested in having a relationship with me. There was a long silence, then. "We need to meet. Your father and I want to talk to you." "Why?" "Because you're our daughter, and we're concerned about you." I laughed, genuinely amused. "You were so concerned that you skipped my wedding to attend Ashley's graduation." "Oh wait, there was no wedding because I called it off. Do you even remember that, Mom?" "Lily, let me be clear. I don't need your concern. I don't need your approval. I don't need anything from you. I have a career, I have money, and I have a grandmother who actually gives a damn about my existence. I'm perfectly fine. Your father will be devastated that you went behind his back. Then he should have been a better father." I hung up before she could respond and blocked both my parents' numbers. It felt like releasing a weight I'd been carrying for 2 lifetimes. An hour later, Ashley called. I'd been waiting for this. Ashley had always been the favorite, but she wasn't cruel, just oblivious, cocooned in the bubble of our parents' adoration. In my first life, she'd genuinely seemed confused when I'd tried to explain how their favoritism had affected me. "But you know they love you," she'd said, as if love was enough without respect or attention or basic fairness. Lily? Her voice was uncertain. Mom just called me. She's really upset. I imagine she is. Why didn't you tell me you were working with Dad's mom? I didn't even know she existed. Neither did I until recently. Turns out Dad lied to us about a lot of things. Can we meet? I want to understand what's happening. Part of me wanted to refuse, to shut her out the way I'd shut out our parents. But Ashley had been complicit in my mistreatment through her passivity, not through active malice. And there was a scenario in my mind, a possibility where Ashley could be salvaged. Fine, I said. Tomorrow. I'll text you the address. We met at one of Helen's hotels, a boutique property in the Arts District that had been featured in Vogue the previous month. Ashley arrived in her usual graduate student uniform, jeans, a Princeton sweatshirt, sneakers. She looked around the lobby with wide eyes, taking in the marble floors and the avant-garde art installations. I met her in the lobby wearing a Dior suit and Louboutin heels, every inch the successful businesswoman. Her face when she saw me was almost comical. Lily, oh my God. We sat in the hotel bar, a dimly lit space with velvet couches and a menu of craft cocktails that cost more than Ashley's textbooks. I ordered a martini. She ordered water. This is insane, Ashley said, looking around. You own this? Grandmother and I own 12 properties like this across the country. This is our newest. I don't understand. 6 months ago, you were working at some tech startup. You were engaged to Tom. What happened? I sipped my martini, choosing my words carefully. I woke up. What does that mean? It means I realized I was living a life designed to make other people comfortable. I was dating Tom because he was safe and unimpressive, and Mom and Dad could feel superior to my choices. I was working a mediocre job because I didn't think I deserved anything better. I was planning a wedding that no one in my family cared about because I was so desperate for approval that I'd take any scraps I could get. Ashley flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? Tell me, Ashley, when was the last time Mom asked about my life without immediately comparing it to yours? When was the last time Dad took me to dinner one-on-one? When was the last time either of them treated me like I mattered as much as you do? They love you. They tolerate me. There's a difference. I leaned forward. Do you know why I called off my wedding? Mom said you realized Tom wasn't right for you. Mom said that? That's interesting, because what actually happened was that Mom told me she and Dad wouldn't be coming to my wedding because they chose to attend your graduate school ceremony instead. Ashley's face went white. What? I sent save the dates 8 months in advance. You got your ceremony date 2 weeks before the wedding. And they chose you. Again, like they've always chosen you. Lily, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You never had to pay attention because everything was always about you. Do you know how much money Dad borrowed from my college fund to pay for your private school? $20,000. Money that was supposed to be mine, used to give you opportunities I never got. I'll pay you back. I don't want your money, Ashley. I have plenty of money. What I wanted was for someone in my family to see me, to value me, to treat me like I was worth their time and attention. I finished my martini. But you know what? I don't need that anymore. I found someone who does see me, who does value me. And I built a life that doesn't require your validation or Mom and Dad's approval. Ashley was crying now, silent tears running down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. You didn't realize because you didn't want to see. It was easier to accept the pedestal Mom and Dad put you on than to question why I wasn't standing there with you. What can I do? She asked. How can I fix this? I studied her, this sister who'd been both my tormentor and my innocent bystander. In my first life, I'd cut her off completely after the wedding debacle, and she'd never reached out. But this, Ashley was crying, was asking how to fix things. Maybe there was something salvageable here after all. You can start by being honest with yourself about our family, I said. You can acknowledge that mom and dad's treatment of me was abusive and that you benefited from it. You can stop making excuses for them. Okay, yes, I can do that. And you can accept that I'm never going back to the way things were. I'm not going to family dinners where everyone ignores me. I'm not going to holidays where I'm an afterthought. I have a new family now, grandmother and me. If you want to be part of my life, you'll have to accept that you're joining my world, not asking me to return to yours. Ashley nodded, wiping her eyes. Can I meet her, grandmother? Maybe, eventually, if you prove you're serious about changing. We talked for another hour. Ashley told me about graduate school, about her research, about her boyfriend who I'd never met because no one had ever thought to introduce us. I told her about the hotels, about my photography, about the life I was building. When we parted, Ashley hugged me tight. I love you, Lily. I'm sorry I never showed it. I love you too, I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. But love isn't enough. Show me through your actions that I matter to you. I will, she promised. Whether she'd follow through remained to be seen, but I'd given her a chance, which was more than anyone in my family had ever given me. The real confrontation came 2 weeks later. My father showed up at my office unannounced, somehow charming his way past security. I was in the middle of a design review when my assistant buzzed me. Lily, there's a Robert Chen here to see you. He says he's your father. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. Send him in. Robert Chen walked into my office like he owned it, his investment banker confidence on full display. He was 55 and looked 40, kept fit by expensive personal trainers and a skincare routine he'd never admit to using. He wore a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He stopped when he saw me behind my desk, surrounded by mood boards and fabric samples, wearing an Alexander McQueen dress and enough success to choke on. Lily. Robert. I didn't call him Dad. I saw him notice the omission. Your office is impressive. Thank you. I'd offer you a seat, but you're not staying long. He flinched. We need to talk about your grandmother. No, we don't. My relationship with Helen is none of your business. She's toxic, Lily. She destroyed our family. She divorced an abusive man and built a successful business. You're the one who decided that made her toxic. You don't understand the history. I understand perfectly. You wanted a traditional mother who would sacrifice her ambitions to support yours. When she refused to be small, you punished her by cutting her out of your life. It's the same thing you did to me, actually. The pattern is very clear. Robert's jaw tightened. I never cut you out. No, you just made it abundantly clear that I wasn't worth your time or attention. Tell me, do you even know what I studied in college? What my job was before this? What my favorite anything is? He opened his mouth, then closed it. That's what I thought, I said. You've spent 26 years treating me like I'm invisible, and now that I've found success without you, you're upset. But you're not upset because you miss me or because you realize you were wrong. You're upset because I found Helen, and that makes you feel like you're losing control. Your mother is devastated. My mother chose Ashley's graduation over my wedding. My mother borrowed from my college fund to pay for Ashley's private school. My mother has spent my entire life making it clear that I'm the backup child, the one who doesn't quite measure up. If she's devastated, it's because she's realized she can't use me as a prop to make herself feel like a good mother anymore. That's not true. It is true. I stood up, planting my hands on my desk. Do you want to know what happened to me in another life? I married Tom even though you didn't come to the wedding. We struggled because your absence humiliated me in front of his family. The marriage fell apart and I died alone and miserable at 29 with divorce papers in my purse and no one who gave a damn. His face went pale. What are you talking about? I'd said too much, let the truth of my rebirth slip through. But maybe it was better this way. Maybe he needed to understand the weight of his choices. I'm talking about consequences, I said, recovering. I'm talking about the fact that the path you set me on led to nothing but pain, but I've changed course now. I have a career I love, money of my own, and a grandmother who actually sees me as a human being. And you know what the best part is? What? You get to watch from the outside. You get to see magazines feature me and Helen, articles about our success, photos of us at galas and charity events. You get to see me living my best life and you don't get to be part of it. That's your consequence. You raised a daughter and convinced her she was worthless, and now she's worth millions and you're not invited to celebrate. Robert stood there, his banker's composure cracking. Lily, we're done here. You can see yourself out. I'm your father. You're a man who shares my DNA. That's all. Now leave before I call security. He left. I watched him go and felt nothing but relief. The months that followed were a masterclass in living well as the best revenge. Helen and I expanded the hotel empire aggressively. We opened properties in Tokyo, Paris, Barcelona, Dubai. Each launch was a spectacle. Celebrity guests, media coverage, social media buzz. I became a fixture in luxury lifestyle magazines, featured in articles about young entrepreneurs revolutionizing hospitality. My Instagram following exploded. Brands started sending me free products, hoping I'd feature them. I was invited to speak at conferences, to judge design competitions, to sit on panels about women in business. And through it all, I made sure my family saw every achievement. I didn't rub it in their faces directly, that would be tacky. But I made sure my success was unavoidable. I gave interviews where I mentioned my grandmother's influence. I posted photos from family dinners with Helen, the two of us laughing over wine at Michelin-starred restaurants. I attended charity galas and posed for pictures with celebrities, politicians, business moguls. I let my life become a magazine spread that my parents couldn't avoid seeing. Ashley tried to stay in touch. She called every few weeks, updating me on her research and her life. I was cordial but distant, making it clear that our relationship was contingent on her behavior. When she graduated with her master's degree, she invited me to the ceremony. I'd love for you to come, she said. I know mom and dad will be there, but you can sit separately if you want. I want you there. I thought about it for a long time. In my first life, I hadn't attended. I'd been too hurt, too angry, too crushed by their choice to prioritize her ceremony over my wedding. But this wasn't my first life, and I wasn't the same broken woman I'd been before. I'll come, I said. But I'm bringing Helen. Ashley's voice brightened. Really? I'd love to meet her. Good, because she's family too, whether mom and dad like it or not. The day of Ashley's graduation was perfect, sunny and warm, with a light breeze that kept the ceremony from being too hot. Helen and I arrived in her Rolls-Royce, both of us dressed in elegant summer dresses and designer sunglasses. We looked like we'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, which was precisely the effect I'd intended. We found seats in the family section, and I watched my parents' faces when they saw us. My mother went white. My father's expression cycled through shock, anger, and something that might have been regret. They were sitting 20 rows ahead of us, and I could see them having a whispered argument, my mother gesturing frantically and my father shaking his head. But they didn't approach us. They didn't cause a scene. Because this was Ashley's day, and even they wouldn't ruin it. Ashley's name was called, and she walked across the stage to receive her diploma. I cheered for her, genuinely proud of her accomplishment. Whatever else was broken in our family, Ashley had worked hard for this moment and deserved to be celebrated. After the ceremony, Ashley found us in the crowd. She hugged me first, then turned to Helen with a shy smile. Grandmother, I'm Ashley. Helen studied her for a long moment, and I saw my father in the distance, watching with a stricken expression. Then Helen smiled and pulled Ashley into a hug. It's lovely to finally meet you, Ashley. Lily has told me wonderful things about your research. We took photos together, me, Ashley, and Helen, 3 generations of Chen women. My mother tried to insert herself into the frame, but I shifted my position to block her out. The photographer didn't seem to notice or chose not to comment. At the reception afterward, my parents finally approached us. My mother had her socialite smile firmly in place, the one she used when she was pretending everything was fine. Mother Helen, she said, using the formal Chinese address. What a surprise to see you here. Is it? Helen replied, coolly. Ashley is my granddaughter. Where else would I be? My father looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that might have been pain. Lily, you look well. I am well, extremely well, in fact. We should talk then. I don't think we have anything to discuss. Lily, please. You had 26 years to treat me like I mattered. You chose not to. That was your decision, and you have to live with the consequences. My mother's smile faltered. We're your parents. You can't just cut us out of your life. Watch me. Helen placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of support and solidarity. Robert, you made your choices a long time ago. You decided you were too proud to have a relationship with me, and you taught your daughter that she wasn't worthy of your attention. Now she's successful beyond anything you could have given her, and you have no one to blame but yourself. This isn't about blame, my father started. Of course it is. You blamed me for refusing to be the wife your father wanted at the Siad. You blamed Lily for not being Ashley. And now you're discovering that the people you blamed didn't need you after all. That's what's really bothering you, isn't it? Not that you lost us, but that we're thriving without you. My father had no response to that. He and my mother stood there, exposed and powerless, while Ashley shifted uncomfortably beside them. We should go, I said to Helen. We have a dinner reservation. Actually, Ashley said quietly, can I come with you? Everyone turned to look at her. My mother's face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, hurt, anger, confusion. Ashley, we had plans to celebrate as a family, she started. You mean the three of you had plans? Ashley interrupted. You excluded Lily from this family a long time ago, and she still came to support me today. I think I'd rather celebrate with the people who actually act like family instead of just claiming the title. I felt something warm bloom in my chest. You're welcome to join us, Ashley. The three of us walked away together, me, Helen, and Ashley, leaving my parents standing alone in a crowd of celebrating families. I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me worth seeing anymore. The final act of my revenge wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was quiet and comprehensive, the kind of victory that built slowly and then became undeniable. Over the next year, Helen officially made me her heir. The lawyers drafted documents that left me 70% of the company, with the remaining 30% in a trust for Ashley, contingent on her building a relationship with Helen and maintaining boundaries with our parents. I want to give her a chance, Helen explained. She's young and she's trying to change, but she needs to prove she's serious. That's fair, I agreed. Ashley did prove herself. She started visiting Helen regularly, learning about the business, building a genuine relationship with her grandmother. She also started going to therapy to process the family dynamics she'd been blind to for so long. It wasn't a quick fix, but it was progress. My parents, meanwhile, spiraled. Without me to use as a scapegoat and Ashley starting to pull away, they had to confront the hollowness of their relationship. My father threw himself into work, staying at the office later and later. My mother joined every possible charity board and social committee, desperate to maintain her image of perfection. But the cracks showed. I heard through the grapevine that they fought constantly, that my father blamed my mother for driving me away, that my mother blamed my father for the estrangement from Helen. Their perfect family narrative had collapsed, and they didn't know how to function without it. I didn't gloat. I didn't send them articles about my success or photos of my happiness. I simply lived my life and let them see it from a distance. 2 years after I'd first knocked on Helen's door, I was featured on the cover of Forbes' 30 Under 30 issue. The headline read, Lily Chen, How One Woman Built a Luxury Empire in 2 Years. The article detailed my partnership with Helen, our revolutionary approach to boutique hospitality, and my photography work that had become sought after in its own right. It mentioned briefly that I'd declined to comment on my relationship with my parents, saying only, some family members understand the value of hard work and mutual respect. Others don't. I choose to invest my time in the people who see my worth. The article went viral. My Instagram gained another 100,000 followers. Brands started reaching out for collaborations. I was invited to speak at TED, and through it all, I remained estranged from my parents. They tried occasionally to reach out. Birthday cards that I returned unopened, emails that I deleted unread, phone calls that went straight to voicemail. I wasn't cruel about it. I simply didn't engage. Because the truth was, I didn't need their acknowledgement anymore. I didn't need their approval or their apology or their belated attempts at affection. I had built a life that was wholly mine, supported by people who valued me from the beginning. My revenge wasn't about making them suffer. It was about making them irrelevant. 3 years after my rebirth, Helen threw a gala to celebrate the opening of our flagship property in Manhattan, a 40-story hotel in Midtown that had been featured in every major publication. The guest list was a who's who of celebrities, politicians, and business leaders. It was the social event of the season. I wore a custom Valentino gown and carried myself like the queen I'd become. Helen stood beside me in the receiving line, elegant and proud, introducing me to everyone who mattered as my granddaughter and business partner. Ashley came too, bringing her boyfriend, a PhD candidate in neuroscience who treated her like an equal partner rather than a prize to be won. She'd graduated from Princeton, turned down my father's offer to fund her PhD in favor of accepting a fellowship she'd earned on her own merit, and was slowly building a life independent of our parents' influence. "I'm proud of you," I told her during a quiet moment on the balcony overlooking the Manhattan skyline. "You're becoming your own person." "I learned from the best," she said, squeezing my hand. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for being willing to change." Inside, the party was in full swing. I gave a speech about the hotel, about Helen's vision, about the future of luxury hospitality. Cameras flashed. People applauded. I was 29 years old, standing in a ballroom I'd designed, wearing a dress that cost more than my first car, surrounded by people who respected me. This was the life I'd died without in my first timeline. This was the life I'd built in my second. And then, in the middle of my moment of triumph, I saw them. My parents. They were standing at the edge of the ballroom, clearly uncomfortable in their department store formal wear among the designer gowns and custom tuxedos. My mother clutched a copy of the Forbes article featuring Helen and me. My father looked older than his 58 years, gray at the temples and tired around the eyes. I could have had security remove them. I could have ignored them, but something in me wanted this final confrontation, this last moment of clarity. I walked over to them, Helen at my side. "This is a private event," I said calmly. How did you get in?" "We told them we were your parents," my mother said. "Lily, we need to talk." "No, we don't. Please." My father's voice cracked. "We made mistakes. We see that now. We want to make things right." "You want to make things right?" I looked around the ballroom, at the evidence of my success, at the life I'd built without them. "What exactly do you think you can offer me now? Approval, affection, an apology?" "All of it," my mother said desperately. "We're so sorry, Lily. We didn't realize what we were doing to you. We didn't understand." "You didn't want to understand. You had a daughter who was smart and capable and loving, and you treated her like she was worthless because she wasn't perfect. You stole from her college fund. You skipped her wedding. You made her feel like she had to earn love that should have been unconditional." "We were wrong," my father said. "We were so wrong. Please give us another chance." I looked at them, these people who'd given me life but never truly loved me, and felt nothing but pity. They were small, desperate, diminished by their own choices. "Here's the thing about chances," I said quietly. "I gave you 26 years of chances. Every birthday you forgot, every achievement you dismissed, every time you chose Ashley over me, those were all chances to do better. You didn't take them. And now, when I've finally built something without you, you want back in. Not because you love me, but because you want to be associated with my success." "That's not true." "It is true. If I were still working at that tech startup, if I were still engaged to Tom, if I were still living a small, forgettable life, you wouldn't be here. You'd still be treating me like I was invisible. But now that I'm successful, now that I'm featured in magazines and hobnobbing with celebrities, suddenly you want a relationship. Suddenly, I'm worth your time." My mother was crying. "Please, Lily, we're your parents." "No," I said firmly. "You're people who created me, but never actually parented me. There's a difference. Helen is more of a mother to me than you've ever been, Miranda, and I don't need you anymore. I don't need your approval or your presence or your belated love. I have everything I want, and I got it without you." I turned to Helen. "Should we call security?" "I think that would be best," she agreed. 2 security guards appeared, professional and discreet. They escorted my parents out while the rest of the party continued, most guests not even noticing the drama. Ashley watched from across the room, her expression sad but understanding. When they were gone, Helen put her arm around my shoulders. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I'm perfect," I said, and meant it. 5 years after my rebirth, I stood in Helen's oceanfront estate on a Saturday morning, watching the sunrise over the Pacific. I was 31 years old. I was worth approximately $200 million in my own right, with full ownership of the boutique hotel division and a successful photography career on the side. I had a Tribeca penthouse, a house in the Hamptons, and a villa in Tuscany. I'd been featured in Vogue, Forbes, and Time. I'd given a TED Talk that had gone viral. I'd dated actors and athletes and tech billionaires, though none of the relationships had stuck. I was too independent now, too self-sufficient to need anyone. And I was happy, genuinely, deeply, bone-deep happy. Helen came out onto the terrace with 2 cups of coffee. She was 78 now, still sharp and elegant, though she'd started talking about retirement. "You're thinking too hard," she observed, handing me a cup. "Just reflecting on how different my life is now?" Different from what? I'd never told her the full truth about my rebirth, but Helen was perceptive. She'd picked up on hints, on my occasional references to things that hadn't happened yet, on my knowledge that seemed too prescient to be coincidence. "Different from what it could have been," I said carefully. "If I'd stayed on the path I was on 5 years ago, I'd be divorced, broke, and miserable right now. Instead, I'm here with you, running a business I love, living a life that feels like mine." "You earned this," Helen said firmly. "Every bit of it. I gave you opportunities, but you did the work. I couldn't have done it without you. And I couldn't have built this legacy without you. That's what family is supposed to be, Lily. Mutual support, mutual respect. Your parents never understood that." We sipped our coffee in comfortable silence, watching the waves crash against the shore. "Have you heard from them recently?" Helen asked. "Christmas card, I sent it back." "Ashley says they've been going to therapy." "That's good for them, but it doesn't change anything for me." "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" I considered the question. Maybe, someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back into my life. They hurt me, and they only care now because I'm successful. That's not real love. That's not real change. That's just them wanting to benefit from what I've built. "You're wiser than I was at your age," Helen said. "It took me decades to figure out what you already know." "I had a good teacher." She smiled and squeezed my hand. Later that day, a package arrived. It was from a publisher who wanted me to write a memoir about my journey from overlooked daughter to business mogul. The advance they were offering was substantial. I called Ashley to discuss it. "Are you going to do it?" she asked. "I don't know. It would mean being honest about mom and dad." "Maybe that's not a bad thing. Their behavior was abusive, Lily. Other people need to hear that favoritism and neglect are real forms of abuse, and that it's okay to walk away from toxic family members." "When did you get so wise?" "When I got a really good therapist and a sister who showed me what self-respect looks like." I laughed. "Okay, I'll think about it." "Whatever you decide, I support you. And if you do write it, I'll read it first and give you honest feedback. Even if it makes you look bad?" "Especially then. I was complicit in their treatment of you, even if I didn't realize it. I need to own that." We talked for another hour, discussing everything and nothing. Our relationship wasn't perfect. We were still learning how to be sisters without the toxic dynamic of our childhood. But it was real. It was honest. It was worth the effort. That night, I sat at my desk in my Manhattan penthouse and started writing. Not the memoir, not yet, but a journal entry, a reflection on the journey I'd taken. 5 years ago, I woke up with memories of a life that ended badly. I'd been unloved, unsupported, and unvalued. I'd married a man who didn't truly see me. I'd died alone and forgotten. But the universe gave me a second chance, and I used it to build something better. I found a grandmother who loved me unconditionally. I created a career that fulfilled me. I learned to value myself even when others didn't. My parents chose my sister's graduation over my wedding, and they thought that was the end of the story. Me accepting their decision, living a small life, always coming in second. But they were wrong. Their choice was actually the beginning of my story. The story of a woman who refused to be invisible, who built an empire, who learned that the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's making them irrelevant. They see my success in magazines now. They see my face on billboards advertising our hotels. They see me at galas and charity events, photographed with people who actually respect me. And they're not part of it. They're spectators to a life they could have shared if only they'd treated me like I mattered. That's my victory. Not their suffering, but their irrelevance. I am Lily Chen. I am my grandmother's heir. I am the architect of my own life. And I am finally, completely free. I closed the journal and looked out at the Manhattan skyline, at the city I'd conquered, at the life I'd built from nothing but second chances and stubborn determination. My phone buzzed. It was a notification that People magazine had published their annual Most Beautiful issue. I was on the cover, photographed in one of our Tokyo hotels, wearing Chanel and smiling like I owned the world. The headline read, Lily Chen, the heiress who made herself. I saved the image and posted it to Instagram with a simple caption. Some flowers bloom despite the weeds, others bloom because they were planted in better soil. I'm grateful I found my garden. Within minutes, the post had thousands of likes. Helen commented with a heart emoji. Ashley wrote, "So proud of you, sis." My parents didn't comment. They never did anymore. But I knew they saw it. I knew they saw every post, every article, every piece of evidence that I was thriving without them. And that knowledge, that certainty that they had to live with the consequences of their choices was sweeter than any direct confrontation could ever be. I'd lived two lives now. The first had been defined by their rejection. The second was defined by my choice to walk away and build something better. If I'd learned anything from my rebirth, it was this. The best revenge isn't about making people suffer. It's about making them realize, too late, exactly what they lost. My parents had lost a daughter who would have loved them unconditionally if they'd only let her. Instead, they got to watch that daughter become someone extraordinary without them. And every time they saw my face in a magazine, every time they read an article about my success, every time they heard my name at a society event they couldn't afford to attend, they had to live with the knowledge that they'd thrown away something priceless. That was my revenge. That was my victory. That was my happy ending. And it was so much better than anything they'd ever given me. Epilogue, 10 years later. I'm 36 now, married to a man I met at a UN charity gala, a diplomat who treats me like an equal partner and thinks my independence is sexy rather than threatening. We have twin daughters who will grow up knowing their great-grandmother Helen and learning that women can build empires. Helen is 83, semi-retired but still sharp as ever. She comes to Sunday dinners at our Hamptons house and tells my daughters stories about building businesses from nothing. They adore her. Ashley is a successful neuroscientist with her own research lab, funded entirely by grants she earned on her own merit. She's close with Helen, close with me, and has maintained strict boundaries with our parents. Her work on neural regeneration has been nominated for a Nobel Prize. My parents are still alive, still married, still living in the same house I grew up in. My father is retired. My mother volunteers at the local library. They sent gifts when my daughters were born, expensive, impersonal things that went straight to charity. They've never met their granddaughters and never will unless they can prove they've genuinely changed, which, after a decade, seems unlikely. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel guilty about the estrangement. Society tells us we should forgive our parents, that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water. But the full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." The family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. I chose Helen. I chose Ashley when she proved she was willing to change. I chose myself and my own happiness over people who'd never valued me. And I've never regretted it for a single day. My memoir was published 5 years ago. It became a bestseller, a rallying cry for everyone who'd ever been overlooked or undervalued by their families. I donated the proceeds to charities supporting young women in business. My parents never commented publicly on the book, though I heard through the grapevine that they'd read it. I heard that my mother cried for days. I heard that my father told people I'd exaggerated and twisted the truth. I also heard that several of their friends quietly distanced themselves after reading my account, that my mother was asked to step down from some of her charity boards, that people started looking at them differently. The truth has consequences. Actions have consequences. And after 36 years, my parents are finally facing the consequences of treating their daughter as expendable. I don't take joy in their discomfort, but I don't feel guilty about it either. I'm standing on the terrace of our Hamptons house watching my daughters play in the garden with their father. Helen is inside making tea. Ashley is on her way with her fiancé for our monthly family dinner. This is my family now. These are the people who chose me just as I chose them. And when my daughters ask me someday why they don't have maternal grandparents, I'll tell them the truth, that some people aren't capable of love, and it's okay to walk away from those people even if they share your DNA. I'll tell them about Helen, who proved that it's never too late to build a real relationship. I'll tell them about Ashley, who proved that people can change if they're willing to do the work, and I'll tell them about myself, about the woman who died unloved at 29 and was reborn with a second chance to build something better. They chose my sister's graduation over my wedding, so I chose myself over them, and I've never been happier. The end.